Okay, so today is May 13th, 2023, and I just brought this home. Tears of the Kingdom for Nintendo Switch. This was technically my birthday present this year, but my birthday is in 5 days, and I'd rather not spend a month offline to avoid spoilers. It's no secret that Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game. Statistically, I'm pretty sure that opinion was my first impression for 90% of you. Looking back, admittedly, I could have been a lot more critical of it than I was in those videos. I love it, for sure, but it's not perfect. The champions are all pretty flat characters, the enemy variety is frankly pathetic, even by Zelda standards, and my lord is the English voice acting not great. There are also issues other people have that I don't necessarily agree with, but I can definitely understand. I love the Divine Beasts, and I think Hyrule Castle here is easily the best dungeon in the series, but I do understand it wasn't what everyone was looking for, especially visually. The Blight Ganons are all pretty samey, at least visually, so the non-dungeon bosses are a lot more interesting to fight. And ultimately, a lot of parts of the game are amazing, but they make it feel like a great game rather than a great Zelda game. But even with all of that, it's still one of my favorite games ever made, let alone my favorite Zelda game. And now, it has a direct sequel. A game that has been hyped up for 4 years. It's been framed in the best possible light. You know, this game ends up being dog shit. I'm gonna feel really stupid dedicating basically a whole year to the franchise for it. Whatever. PPG did Mario Month because of Mario Party the Top 100. So, now I just have to figure out how I feel about it for myself. Wish me luck, and I'll see you all on the other side. Peace. It's been 6 years in the making, but the sequel to Breath of the Wild is here. And has been here for almost a month. Yeah, I'm a little late making what is essentially a first impressions video, but to be fair, the title of this video is pretty literal. Like, I've taken about 4 breaks from playing Tears of the Kingdom since I got it. One to celebrate my birthday, one to talk to a doctor, one to get a blood draw, and one to make this video. So, yeah, spoiler alert, I love this game. I have lost dozens, if not hundreds of hours playing this game. For anyone who was mad that Breath of the Wild was #1 on my Zelda ranking video, I have bad news. In hindsight, I would have combined Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time with their 3DS versions and promote Oracle of Ages so Ocarina of Time would be ranked number 8. Or rather, number 9, because Tears of the Kingdom is now my favorite Zelda game ever. Don't worry, my Zelda opinions change every few months, so within a year I could hate every game in the series except Zelda 2. This is supposed to be a Tears of the Kingdom review, isn't it? I will say this, if you were one of those people who absolutely hated everything about Breath of the Wild, then you will not enjoy Tears of the Kingdom. Saying the core of the game is ultimately the same would basically be an understatement. It's still a game about exploring, completing shrines, talking to NPCs, there are location-based memories to find, we have even more Korok seeds to collect that follow a few basic patterns, and while the fuse mechanic does reduce the headache of weapon durability, that durability is still a core part of the game's design, intended to make you diversify your gameplay style. Also, while the dungeons are better than the Divine Beasts, at least from what I can tell, they are still very different from the traditional Zelda dungeon. No real keys, open design where you complete a simple task multiple times, and at the end you get a superpower and, optionally, a heart container. So, yeah, if you hated the core loop of Breath of the Wild, you'll probably hate Tears of the Kingdom. There are improvements, of course, and I'm sure some people who didn't love Breath will really enjoy Tears, but if you're the kind of person who thinks that Breath of the Wild didn't have any puzzles at all, or that the only things to find in it were Korok seeds or shrines, then you probably won't like Tears of the Kingdom. You're also probably dumb, but then I'm someone who loves Kirby's Star Allies, so who am I to talk? So, about those improvements. The biggest change from Breath of the Wild in moment-to-moment gameplay is the ability loadout. While that game had the runes, aka the metal moving, pause for a few seconds, don't drown immediately, and the remote bombs, Tears of the Kingdom has 4 brand new abilities based around Link's transplanted arm. Fuse is probably the most integral piece of the game that you basically have to use in order to progress. Admittedly, that's partially because they make you use it. The axes and hammers that can be found in the last game are all basically gone, and the weapons that are still here are almost all decayed to the point that the max damage a one-handed sword can do can barely kill a red bokoblin. But still, fusing is so much cooler than I thought it would be before release. I figured it would be a very basic addition set. Each thing you can fuse to a weapon would add a certain amount of damage and durability as well as more reach. Some of the fusions would have more special properties like puff shroom or elemental items or those homing eyeballs, but in general, fusing would just be a problem solver. And yes, to a certain extent that is the main purpose of the mechanic, but I seriously underestimated how deep it would be. There are new stone shapes that let you craft your own special axes or turn a spear into a special kind of halberd. Boulders and spike balls make special hammers that are your best way to break through certain obstacles. There are so many different special objects with unique fusion properties. I feel like I could play the game for years and still not see every single worthwhile fusion. And yet, despite all of this, it's still approachably simple. Just fuse something onto a weapon to get a better weapon, fuse a material to your arrow to get a special arrow, fuse something with wheels to your shield to get a literal skateboard. Easy to learn, hard to master. Fantastic. In terms of mechanics that are easy to master, we have Ascend. Ascend is probably the most basic of the main abilities. Men go up through the ceiling. I saw a fair number of people reacting to the gameplay reveal note this as the least interesting of the additions shown off, and admittedly it isn't exactly advanced calculus. If you're within a certain range from the ceiling and the ground directly above can be walked on, you can press one button and go straight upwards. And it does work as a nice quality of life addition to be sure, but I was surprised how many different ideas they came up with for this ability. Like, hey, you want to move up to a moving platform? Want to get into an inaccessible area from below? Want to make a stack of 20 boxes and go straight to the top? Sure, it's situational, but that situation is about as common as jumping on an enemy in a Mario game. Similarly, we have the Recall ability, the final ability earned in the tutorial area. Again, a lot of its uses are situational. Raft floats downriver, you can make him go back up. Falling debris can be sent back up into the air, so you can get up without a ceiling. You can also send projectiles back at enemies without even parrying, which is cool. There are a lot of really useful cases for Rewind, don't get me wrong, and it's basically a way of redoing puzzles if you mess them up. Still, it's not exactly the most exciting ability in the world. You know what is already. Ultra Hand. Because Nintendo can never be too self-referential. Look, if you've been online and seen anything about Tears of the Kingdom in the past month, you've seen the best of Ultra Hand already. I'll keep this short because I'm not great with it anyways. You can move things around freely, you can attach things together, and you can make devices that I just do not know how to build. People can make incredibly intricate robots and mechs and vehicles and predator drones. I can make a basic plane. It's still an incredibly useful ability, and naturally it's the first ability you get in the game. It's so integral to the game's design that frankly it feels shocking that Breath of the Wild didn't have it. Sort of. I mean, Magnesis also allows you to move stuff, but otherwise, yeah, Ultra Hand is unique to Tears of the Kingdom. It's such a cool ability, honestly. I love Ultra Hand. It's so bad. And yeah, that's all the new abilities. Pretty cool loadout, I'd say. If that was the only addition to the game, then decent expansion pack sequel, probably complicated to program, but still not a lot. Instead, there's just so much. So, as shown off in pretty much every trailer, we have Sky Islands miles above Hyrule proper. These are pretty similar to Skyward Sword. We have a few very substantial islands with a decent amount of content, but in general they're mostly a few puzzles, in this case usually in the form of shrines and treasure chests. Not that that's a bad thing, I think the more modular design of most of the islands works with the exploration focus of the game. Some may have an issue with the reused layouts that a lot of these use, but in my opinion the similar layout works similarly to the repeated themes of the shrines. Yes, some of the broad strokes are identical, but the core puzzle behind it varies enough to keep you engaged. Besides, not all of the islands follow this philosophy. Take the tutorial island, or islands technically. It definitely follows a similar design format to the Great Plateau, complete with its own Temple of Time, but with the new abilities you earn here, you get so many cool ways to experiment. Like, the Great Plateau was fun, but it didn't have minecart rails you could shield grind on. There are other very fun and substantial islands to explore, of course, but that's a lot of spoilers. Also, I only recorded the tutorial area, and I don't want to download someone's full playthrough of this game. I've made that mistake before. Below the Sky Islands, we have the Kingdom of Hyrule, and wow. I don't want to be hyperbolic here and say, oh, it's a completely different Hyrule, nothing is the same, because realistically, yeah, a lot of it is pretty identical to Breath of the Wild. The general geography is the same, so if you have the map memorized already, you're going to be very familiar with it here. However, not only does it feel different right off the bat thanks to where you first arrive in Hyrule, but the world has actually changed a great deal since the last game. New paths have been opened thanks to environmental changes, the falling debris has drastically altered a lot of the landscape, and perhaps the smartest move the Zelda team could have made, we now have caves. Hundreds of caves. Okay, so this may not seem important, but the caves make exploring Hyrule proper so much more interesting. The caves all have different layouts. They usually have their own kinds of enemies, and each and every cave has a special, unique collectible. It's amazing, especially because what both this game and Breath of the Wild excel at is making the player explore and find things for themselves. You don't get an alert of where each of the caves are just by unlocking the map of an area. You have to find your caves yourself, or if you can't do that, find special ways in-game to make them more obvious. It's so fun. Overall, the world is just as big and deep to explore as before, if not more so. But hey, want twice as much to explore? Again, I'm not going to go in depth about the depths. No, yuck. In this case, because, I don't have any footage even related to them. But yeah, the biggest addition to the world is an underground reflection of Hyrule proper. It's pitch dark unless you use special items or find the important light roots. It's filled with gloom, which eats into your max health and can only be recovered from with special meals, using the light roots, or leaving the depths altogether. Most of the enemies in the depths are also coated in gloom, so anytime they hit you, you lose not only standard health, but max health too. There are unique treasures, mines to explore, and earn from, mirrored height maps, and strange flora, and it's all so good! Oh, what? Don't think the huge world is enough? Okay, smart Alec, how about we almost double the amount of content in that world? Yeah, that's right. If you combine the side quests and the new side adventures, there are almost 20 different optional quests completely unconnected from the main storyline. And if you do follow the main story, you get dungeons that, for all my comments earlier, are so much better both visually and gameplay-wise than the Divine Beasts, a much more engaging story than Breath of the Wild, drastic changes to the locations you've grown so familiar with, growth for NPCs, even incredibly minor ones that most people would have forgotten about, and it's so good and there's so damn much! Okay, Soria, calm down. The main thing that sticks out to me is just how much content there is in Tears of the Kingdom. Like, at multiple points throughout my playthrough, I found myself just looking at the game and thinking, there's just so much, over and over again. Honestly, if someone said this was a problem for them, and there was so much to do in the game that I felt overwhelmed, I wouldn't blame them. Like, I've been playing for over 100 hours, and while I've completed most of the main story, I still feel like I've barely done half of what the game has to offer. Legitimately, I beat all of the game's 6 main dungeon quests before I fought a Lionel. There are items and mechanics in the game that I've either barely touched or haven't even found. I'm not even trying to 100% complete the game. I like the Koroks more than most people, but I'm not going to find 1,000 of them anytime soon. Of course, the game isn't perfect. I love it a lot. But there's so much content in here that, frankly, some of it isn't quite up to par. The cutscenes are better written and acted than in Breath of the Wild, but since the story is more complicated while still mostly being open, they can be pretty damn repetitive. I think the side quests are still fun, but there are a lot of them that you can complete at the exact moment you get them, or frankly, hours before. I love most of the new plotlines for the various settlements, but Hateno Village easily has the weakest one, at least for me. And while I love the dungeons a lot more than the Divine Beasts in general, one of the dungeons specifically, including its boss fight, is just really bad. If you know, you know. If you're looking for flaws in the game, you're going to find them. Obviously. No game is perfect. Yes, including Portal. I don't care if you hate me, I'm speaking my truth. But here's the thing. I don't think the individual flaws matter all that much. What matters is the experience I have playing, and that experience is so goddamn fun. I'm being honest when I say I haven't enjoyed a game this much in a long time. Don't get me wrong, I don't think anyone would be wrong for disliking this game, both in terms of having different taste in games and just from the problems I've mentioned above. But for me, this is easily one of the best games I've ever played, definitely from the Zelda series. And that's about all I can say. It's weird to write this video because despite having almost beaten the game, it still feels like a first impressions review. I feel like this game is so deep I won't be able to fully complete it for literal years. It doesn't help that, like I've said, I've been avoiding spoilers, and for the spoilers I do have, I don't actually have any relevant footage. But still, ultimately, the main takeaway is, this game is amazing. if you think there's even a chance you like it, I implore you to play it for yourself. And if you don't think you'll like it, then, don't harass me. So, all that's left for me to talk about are spoilers. Spoiler alert from here on, and forgive me for the completely irrelevant gameplay footage. Time for completely unorganized thoughts about the game and plot of Tears of the Kingdom. Woo! I'm going to be completely honest, I fully thought Cece was going to be being controlled by the mushrooms in her hat. Like, Nintendo saw the edgelord game theories about the toads being parasites and decided to make it a plot point in Zelda. I mean, she does move around really weirdly. I guess it's supposed to be like a supermodel doing a bunch of poses. I don't know. I don't mind Yona, honestly. I just find the whole situation funny. For the fans, I find it hilarious that some people actually thought Nintendo were going to go along with the implication that Link and Sidon are a couple. Like, even outside of the game thing, I'm pretty sure this Link and Zelda are literally fucking at this point. And for Nintendo, I just imagine one of the writers from Breath of the Wild bursting into Aonuma's office and being like, "Sir, we fucked up big time." In case you couldn't tell, yes, the Water Temple is the dungeon that I hated. The weird low gravity that makes it feel like an underwater level despite you being miles into the air, leaving you playing the game in pseudo-slow motion. And the boss fight? Not only does it force you to move slowly, but I ran out of arrows during its second phase, which only made things slower and harder to actually deal with. Seriously, I need one of those bitchy YouTube videos about how Muktarok is bad game design. I know the meme of Link being Zelda's Tony Hawk has basically run its course, and I've seen various theories about why it actually makes sense, but I do find some of the implications for returning NPCs funny. Like, Mina and Mills not recognizing Link makes decent sense, but you're telling me Hesto doesn't know who I am? What, did this Link do a Zero Korok seed run? I'm one of those weird players who likes doing things in the intended way, even in fairly open games like this, but I actually ended up messing up the intended order for the story quests by complete accident. I grabbed the Master Sword between the second and third dungeons, and then I did the sixth dungeon in between the third and fourth. This made the scene where all the main characters are trying to figure out what to do next a lot funnier, because it was like, hey, maybe this is how we solve the problem. Wait, Link, you did what? I love the side quest where a bunch of school kids are like, nah, the calamity didn't happen, that's just a fairy tale, and meanwhile Link is literally standing right there and doesn't say shit. It's great. There's still a bit of a problem with Link just not having a personality in cutscenes. Like in my other favorite Zelda games, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword, Link has such detailed and expressive facial animation that even without saying a single word, he manages to convey so much of his personality. But here and in Breath of the Wild, whenever a cutscene is playing, Link's face has two modes. Confidently above all of your human feelings, and oh fuck, I am literally about to die. As of writing this, I've yet to kill a single Gleeok. I tried to kill the Ice Gleeok, but, I died. A lot. In general, I've died a lot more in Tears of the Kingdom than I ever did in Breath of the Wild. Part of that has to do with, being bad at video games, which I am. However, I also think the game is pretty substantially more difficult, especially with a lot of the new monsters. I'm going to say that this game and Breath of the Wild are solidly in an alternate continuity from the other games in the series at this point. Like, some aspects of Skyward Sword's backstory might have been carried over, but otherwise, yeah, this is a full reboot. You know, if the new magical llama race wasn't enough of an indication. What else? We have new dresses to put Link in.